Hello everyone, welcome back to Chess on Ice. This video is probably coming out, publicly at least, just a little bit after the Scotties wraps up. Hope everyone's enjoying championship season this late in the curling year. Today I want to talk about a topic that I've seen come up a lot at our curling club, and it's about corner guards. When do you throw corner guards? Why do you throw corner guards? How do you make use of corner guards? Because I've seen this go both ways, especially at the club level. You have people who swear they never want to throw a corner guard because they never use them, in which case the problem is really, just not knowing how to use them. But I've also seen people who throw too many, to be honest, throw them in situations where they're really not warranted, because maybe they got the impression that that's just what you're supposed to do when you have the hammer. So let's break down a little bit of when you should throw a corner guard and why. So for starters, why do we throw corner guards? Well, we throw guards, always, because we're looking to score points, especially multiple points. You might be thinking, especially if you don't think about curling strategy a lot, well, of course you always want to score points. Maybe a better way to put it is, we throw guards when our priority is to score points, and with the hammer, we throw guards when our priority is to make sure we score 2 or more points. We also sometimes throw guards, or often throw guards, without the hammer. But a lot of times we're only trying to steal 1 in that case. Why do we want to put it in the corner? Well, if you're the hammer team, you'd prefer not to have a centerline guard. A centerline guard can get messy. The other team can come around it to the top 4 or top of the button, and suddenly it's very difficult to score. Certainly very difficult to score a lot of points. So if we have the choice, we would love to play to the wings, to play away from the center, which makes it much harder for even a great shot from the opposing team to stop us completely from building an end where we can score 2 or more. Okay, so when should we throw a corner guard? Well, the answer is it depends. It's going to depend a lot on what your team does well, what your team's style is, but let's try to lay down a few basic guidelines. So let's say the opposing team throws a centerline guard. That's pretty common, right? We see our opponents throw a centerline guard all the time. Do we then have to throw a corner guard? Well, again, it depends, but a lot of that's going to depend on the score. Generally, though not always at the club level, people are throwing centerline guards when the game's still close or when they are behind and really need to push for a steal. In those cases, you don't have to throw up a corner guard and help them clog up the game. If the game is close, and even if you're looking to score 2, it's okay to come around that center guard. You can just come around the center guard, get to the 4-foot first, maybe even get higher than that to keep the scoring area bigger, and try to build a 2 with that guard. Now, I did just say that with the hammer, you are trying to pull the play away from the center, and that's true, but sometimes the non-hammer team can really force you to play in the middle. One center guard doesn't completely do that, but it may be easier, especially at club level, to acquiesce. Once they get that good guard up, we'll just use it. And, even if that means there's slightly less of a chance of us building a big end because we're playing towards the middle, it's still okay. And you can certainly get 2 or more this way. What if we're way ahead when they throw that center guard? In that case, you may choose to go to the wings, but maybe not a guard. Maybe we're going to throw one into the house in the wings. They're not going to go after it, or at least they shouldn't. If they do, you're pretty happy. You can hit back. But you don't want to play to the middle. You don't want to potentially throw something deep behind the T-line or really anything even close to the T-line that they can use. And anything higher than that, like you throw something top 12, it could end up working out as like a second guard for them. So, with a big lead, you play to the corners. Corner guard doesn't really hurt you if your lead comes up light. You throw through, you're not in any real danger yet because you do have a big lead on the hammer. And if you put one in around T-line on either wing, out towards the 12-foot ideally, it's not going to hurt you, and it could add a point later in the end if things go your way. So what about when the other team throws that centerline guard, even though they're winning and you're behind and have to score a multiple, especially late in the game when you think you might have to score a pretty big multiple? In that case, you might still throw a corner guard. It may be that you're willing to take a risk. Because remember, every time you throw a corner guard, you are risking something. You are allowing the non-hammer team to set up a big center that you're going to have to break down at some point. Assuming they make their shots, of course. Sometimes we get lucky, and especially at the club level, we can count on not everything being made perfectly, so we'll know we'll get some opportunities. But there's still risk involved every time you throw that corner guard, that the non-hammer team gets to really dial in on the center line and try to make it as hard as possible for you to end up counting. But if we're down big, maybe that's a risk we want to take. I will say that at the club level, if you're just not comfortable doing that, if your team never breaks down the center, your team can't really throw a lot of hits, your team doesn't feel comfortable drawing to the wings, if you know this, it's something you're going to work on, but for now, go around the center guard again. It's still there, still a guard you can use. Ideally, you'll throw up another guard so you at least have a couple guards to use, even if you concentrate your play in the middle, but it's okay to use it right away if you have to. What about when the other team throws in on their first rock, say to the top 4, or any other good rock, top 8, top 12, something in the middle in the house? Well, if you have a lead, you're just going to hit that rock, of course, right? If you don't have the lead, things get more interesting. If it's a close game and early, you may play a hit anyway, especially if you're a defensive-minded team or even a neutral team that's kind of happy with the situation and just wants to let it play out. At high levels of curling, maybe even at the top level of your own club, this will often lead to a blank. At other levels of club curling, though, that's not necessarily true. We might get a miss at some point from the other team. They might not decide to hit back right away. There's all sorts of reasons why an end may develop out of nowhere. Flashes happen, especially among more recreational curlers. And even competitive curlers up to a certain level are not going to make every hit. If we're actually behind in the game, then we're going to throw a corner guard again. And it's for the same reasons as before, only now we don't have that center guard as a potential one to use. Our opponents have forced our hand by coming into the house. If we're way behind, we don't want to hit. Even if the other team doesn't hit well, this isn't a recipe for getting a lot of points, right? They're going to make some of their hits. We're only playing into the house. There's nowhere to hide, really. We may end up with rock clusters that can allow even teams that don't hit well to potentially double us out. We need a guard, and we don't want it in the center, so where does it go? It goes to the corner. Finally, what happens if our opponents throw a poor rock? And I'll divide these into 2 categories because one needs a special note. What if your opponents accidentally throw a corner guard? You could just use it then. Unless you're way behind and maybe then you want to throw a second one on the other side or in front of theirs so they can't hit their zone out if they were going to maybe try the peel of shame. In most cases, in a close game, if it's relatively early, they throw up a corner guard, feel free to go right around it. It's not the right color, but hey, it's a guard you can use. How about all other misses? Either they throw through, they hog, or they put something into the house way out on the wings, front, back house, something that shouldn't count for them, assuming you put together a decent end. In that case, I would suggest most of the time, you're going to throw a corner guard. There's nothing useful in play after the first shot. Put up a guard. It's like a freebie. They're not threatening anything in the center, so there is no risk, unlike what we talked about earlier. And instead, you're going to throw up the corner guard, knowing that you're now forcing the play, or at least threatening to force the play, into the wings, which is where you ideally want to play. The only exception would be if you have a big lead, maybe don't put up any guard at all. You just throw one into the wings, knowing they're probably not going to hit it. And if they do, you're pretty happy with that, since that means they're not going to really be threatening to steal, right? So there you go. I hope that's a quick, concise guide on when the right times are to throw a corner guard, and I hope it shows there's a little bit of variation in what you can do. I made a mention there at the club level that if the other team throws a center guard and it's close, you probably don't need to throw a corner guard. But if you are part of my Patreon, you'll know that the last end review video we do, which is an exclusive for Patreon backers, talked about a game at the men's championship in the United States where a team did just that in an attempt to jump on their opponents in the first end. He ended up getting a big end and winning the game in what was definitely an upset. You can join the Patreon below. I'll put a link in the description. You get an exclusive end review video every month, which, as I said, was from the U.S. Men's Championship last month. You get videos earlier than everyone else, and you get your name in the credits, which is always fun. Do you have any thoughts on when the right time or wrong time to throw a corner guard is, particularly in club play? Let us know down in the comments. I'm sure there'll be a good discussion on that topic. It's one that always seems to generate some talk in a lot of different directions at my club. If you like this video, please be sure to like it. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You'll get to see, updates on when all my new videos come out. Probably be doing more frequency of videos again. I got caught up with a few things in life that just made it hard to do the last couple months. And even check out the Patreon, as I mentioned before. Another great way to support the channel if you're interested. So that's it for now. Until next time, good curling.